No problem.
Then we are going to start with the interregional meeting. Okay, I don't want to welcome, but I would like to present the structure and the content of this interregional meeting. As you can see, this interregional meeting is held in the framework of the extension of ENHANCE project. The main objective of this interregional meeting is to lay the groundwork for the exchange of experiences derived from the result obtained from the surveys and interviews. So, the specific objectives are twofold: to share the result obtained from the surveys and interviews, and to share experiences on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis among partners and their main stakeholders. To cover this specific objective, the agenda of this interregional meeting has been organized and structured as follows. The first section is to welcome by the leader of the ENHANCE project and by European Commission. The second section is to present the ENHANCE project and your main results obtained. In this second section, we will present, on the one hand, the result obtained during the surveys and interviews, carried out to know how EMAS has been affected by COVID crisis. And on the other hand, we will share some good practices, experiences, and measures adopted by EMAS competent bodies, EMAS verifiers, and EMAS-registered organizations to face and recover from the COVID crisis. And finally, the final section is to open discussion about these experiences adopted by the participating regions among the partners and their main stakeholders. So, if you have some questions, please let's go to leave them at the end of our presentation because we don't have much time. Well, according to the structure of the agenda for this interregional meeting, our speaker will be Ms. María José Sarrias as a head of the Service of Environmental Qualification of the Catalonian government. In this case, Catalonia is a leader of the ENHANCE project. And Ms. Frederick Detry as an EMA policy officer. She will present us the instructions and recommendations provided by the European Commission to EMA's competent bodies during the COVID pandemic. This section will be led by me. I will present you the main objective and additional activities carried out in the framework of the project extension. And Mr. Alessio Novi as a representative of the Italian partners, Scuola Superiore of Sant'Anna. They have been carried out and lead the understanding phase to know how EMAS have been affected by COVID crisis through surveys and interviews. They will present us the main result and conclusion obtained during this phase. And finally, in this last section, will participate representatives of EMAS competent bodies, EMAS verifiers, and EMAS-registered organizations. All of them share your experiences and good practices adopted during the COVID pandemic to face and recover from this crisis. As an EMAS competent bodies, we will have the participation and support of Ms. Hannah Slamach as an Austrian competent bodies on EMAS and Mrs. Virginia Ferrer as a Catalonia competent body on EMAS. They will share your experiences carried out during the COVID pandemic in your countries to facilitate the EMAS registration among your EMAS companies. And EMAS verifiers, we will have the participation and support of Mr. Edelio Gago as a head of ENAC. ENAC is a national accreditation body, and the same way to the European Commission, ENAC provides us recommendations and instructions to EMAS verifiers to be adopted during the COVID pandemic. And Mr. Harry Mora, as a representative of Estonian partner and as a representative of EMAS verifier in Estonia. And finally, as an EMAS organization, we will have the participation and support of Mr. Giuseppe, as a head of the section of qualification system of the Catalonia government, and as a representative of EMAS-registered organization from public sector. And finally, Mr. Simon Mainschat, as a CEO of whole system hygiene from Austria. Both will share your experiences and good practices adopted during the COVID pandemic. Okay, without further delay, I give the floor to Ms. Maria Jose Sarrias, who will welcome us. Okay.
Thank you very much, Aurora. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you for attending this interregional meeting and for giving us the opportunity to share experiences and good practices in EMAS within the framework of the COVID health crisis. We are especially grateful for the participation of Frédéric Detry as EMAS representative in the Commission, who will give us an overview of how have been dealt with the changes that have unexpectedly affected the EMAS model and what the current situation is in this respect. I would also like to thank the valuable participation of ENAC as a representative of our national accreditation body and the Estonian verifier, the participation of representatives of EMAS organization, and of course of the competent bodies that have played an important role in finding a balance despite the changes that the situation may have generated in the EMAS registration or renewal processes. The one-year extension of the enhanced project activities is allowing us to identify the strengths of the EMAS model, but also its possible weaknesses in situations such as this health crisis, which has been traumatic for many organizations. However, in this situation, it is also necessary to identify the opportunities that recovery offers us. It is also here, and especially in the framework of the circular economy, that the EMAS model can strategically position itself as a very efficient management tool to address a process of transition from the current economic model to a more resource-efficient production model. I now give way to your presentations that will undoubtedly contribute a lot of the project and will surely generate a starting point in the process of exchanging experiences and good practices and mutual learning in this extension of enhanced project. Thank you very much, and come on, empezamos. Thank you.
Sorry, I have activated my microphone. I give the floor to Ms. Frédéric Detry, EMAS Policy Officer from the European Commission. Frédéric, when you want.
Yes, thank you. I have no presentation. I mean, no PowerPoint presentation, so I just say a few words on the topic you asked me to talk about. So yeah, good morning again, and thank you for having me here at this meeting. So as said, I was asked to say a few words on the recommendations and instructions with regard to the EMAS scheme that we provided from the European Commission during the COVID pandemic. And it's true that the last 2 years were indeed very challenging times for everyone on private basis, and also with a huge impact on the work life and of course the functioning of the EMAS scheme. So let's hope that the worst is behind us and that there will be not again a general lockdown, so that we can continue with the normal procedures. But maybe we can also take something out of this crisis, that things can work out differently, that a lot is possible remotely, thanks to all these many technical solutions that developed or were used more and more during this time. But let me first get to the Corona crisis. In general, I must say that we as the Commission were not contacted very much with issues related to the EMAS scheme, the EMAS registration. Member states handled it very well and found different practical solutions. The main issue that the Commission was approached with was the question of the on-site visit during the verification and validation exercise. Article 25, paragraph 4 of the EMAS regulation requires clearly that as part of the verification and validation activities, the environmental verifier should visit the organization, carry out spot checks, and conduct interviews with personnel. If the verifier doesn't fulfill this obligation, the competent body cannot validate the registration or the renewal of the registration. But obviously, on-site visits were not possible during long periods. Initially, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, when no one expected it to last for so long, the Commission gave out the message to simply reschedule those site visits to a later date when the sanitary measures were finished. But then it became obvious that this would not happen very soon, and the Commission was asked for further guidance. You must understand that the EMAS regulation doesn't foresee any exceptions to this requirement of the on-site visit. There's also no explicit mention of measures to be taken in exceptional situations, as it was the Corona crisis. And we cannot just quickly change the regulation as such, as this requires a long legislative procedure. Thus, the only option to derogate from this requirement was to invoke the generally accepted principle of EU law of force majeure. There's a lot of jurisdiction on this principle, but basically it says that force majeure must be understood as referring to abnormal and unforeseeable circumstances which were outside the control of the party by whom it is pleaded, and the consequences of which could not have been avoided in spite of exercise of all due care. These specific circumstances then need to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So with regard to the EMAS verification, it needed to be assessed if there was really no possibility to go on site. And this needed to be done by the responsible competent body and not the Commission, as only they had the first-hand knowledge of the pandemic situation on the ground. If then this had been the case, all the circumstances were there, the concerned competent body was able to renew the EMAS registration, although no on-site visit took place. But of course, this is just the last resort. So as far as possible, the respective verification needed to have been done remotely. This principle and its consequences with regard to the EMAS audit were explained in our second letter that was sent out to the EMAS representatives. But this principle stands there by itself without the need of any official letter sent out by the Commission, and it can be invoked by any concerned party in the relevant situation when it's really impossible to fulfill specific requirements. And I suppose that this approach was taken on several occasions during the high time of the Corona crisis. But what is now? It is, well, things changed all the time, but it is not for me or the Commission as an institution to assess whether force majeure is still applicable in a specific case. That stays with the verifiers and the competent bodies. From my general knowledge, in most member states, the situation gets back to normal. On-site visits should be possible again. And if the situation should get worse again, force majeure can also be invoked again, of course. Now, including the possibility to do a 100% remote audit also in normal times is, of course, an option that we have already discussed on several occasions in the different fora with the member states. The impression that I got was that the positions are quite opposed. There are voices that, especially after the experience gained during the COVID crisis, they say that everything can be done remotely. Others say that an on-site visit is indispensable to ensure proper verification. So I'm not in the position to give a final say on that, but I'm sure the presentations today will also teach me a bit more about the practical effects of this crisis and the instructions that were given by the European Commission. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, Mrs. Frederick, thanks a lot for your contribution. As an EMAS competent bodies, we know about this measure adopted by the European Commission, but in any case, we can discuss about them later during the session of the open discussion. Okay, further delay, I'm going to share my presentation again. Wait. Okay, I'm going to share my presentation about the ENHANCE project as a background and context of the following session. This is my agenda. I will present briefly the ENHANCE project carried out from January 2017 to December 2020 in the framework of the second call of Interreg Europe program. On the other hand, I will present the extension of the ENHANCE project in the framework of the 5th call of Interreg Europe program carried out in response of COVID crisis. As you know, ENHANCE project was approved in the second call of Interreg Europe program. The main objective of the ENHANCE project was to improve the implementation of regional policy instruments oriented at increasing the resource efficiency through EMAS. The project supports the exchange experiences and practices among public authorities for the promotion EMAS in the regions and countries as an opportunity to develop circular economy. In this case, the consortium was represented by partners from Catalonia as a leader, Andalusia, Italy, Estonia, Czech Republic, and Austria. The project activities were organized in two phases. From January 2017 to December 2018, we carry out activities linked with our regional studies, identification of good practices adopted on EMAS promotion, and selection of the best practices to transfer into the participating regions and countries through the regional action plans. From January 2019 to December 2020, these regional action plans were implemented. Through the implementation of the regional action plans, incentives and promotion measures we adopted among the participating regions and countries on regulatory relief, fast tracks, tax reduction, green public procurement, and so on. ENHANCE project finished on December 2020, but in April 2021, a new call for Interreg Europe was opened derived from the COVID pandemic. Interreg Europe have the opportunity to submit an extension of the projects approved during the first and second call as ENHANCE project. So, additional activities were approved to exchange of experiences among regions on EMAS, with the objective that the lesson learned from this exchange can lead to further policy improvement in these regions. In this case, the project planning has been only for 1 year, I mean from September 2021 from September 2022. Also, not all partners have participated in this extension. Partners from Andalusia and Czech Republic have not participated in this extension. So, the consortium in this case is represented by partners from Catalonia as a leader, Italy, Estonia, and Austria. The new technical activities have been organized as you can see. 3 types of activities have been carried out during this extension. understanding activities to know and analyze the COVID impact in our regional policy instrument oriented to EMAS STEM. Reacting activities to know and identify experiences and practices on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis. And looking forward, activities to share and exchange experiences and good practices on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis. This exchange of experiences will be carried out through thematic workshops to be held in Austria on April and in Estonia on June 2022. In fact, we are today here in this interregional meeting as a previous step to carry out in-depth analysis of experiences through thematic workshops. So, the main objective of this interregional meeting, as I said before, is to lay the groundwork for the exchange of experiences. For these reasons, we are today with the aim at sharing the results obtained from the surveys and interviews and sharing the experiences on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis. The main objectives of these extensions are twofold: to further exchange experiences on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis, and to further improve the regional development policy instrument to better face and recover from this unprecedented situation. With these two main objectives, the additional activities have been organized in three types of phase: understanding, reacting, and looking forward activities. Regarding the understanding phase, the objective has been to analyze how the policy instruments oriented to EMAS system have been affected by the COVID crisis. The main actors involved in this phase have been partners and their main stakeholders at the regional level. I mean, EMAS competent bodies, EMAS verifiers, EMAS-registered organizations, and responsible for the regional policy instrument. This phase has been carried out through surveys and interviews with these stakeholders and with the public officer in charge of these policy instruments. The main result obtained in this phase will be shared later by Mr. Alessio as a representative of Scuola Superiore of Sant'Anna and as a leader of this activity in this case. Regarding the reacting activities, the objective of this phase has been to identify experiences on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis. The main actors involved in this phase are the same understanding phase. I mean, partners with the main stakeholders, I mean EMAS verifiers, EMAS competent bodies, EMAS registered organization, and responsible for the policy instrument. And finally, the looking forward activities. During these activities, we will analyze in depth how these experiences on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis can be transferred and implemented from a region to another through the organization of two thematic workshops. The actors to be involved in this case will be the four partners and, of course, their main stakeholder in each case. Summarizing the expected results during the enhanced extension, experiences and good practices on EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis will be exchanged, transferred, described, and uploaded in the Interreg Europe database, and our regional policy instruments will be improved, oriented on EMAS. Okay, that is all. And I have the floor to Mr. Alessio Novi, who will present the main result obtained from the surveys of EMAS competent bodies, EMAS verifiers, and EMAS registered organization. Alessio, wait, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, I'm going to share mine.
Okay.
Okay, so as it has already been said, the main goal of the survey was to investigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the EMAS system. So to do so, we designed 3 different surveys. One survey for EMAS certified organizations, one for environmental verifiers, and one for EMAS competent bodies. The aim was to investigate specifically EMAS organizations, but then we wanted to enlarge the field of application to involve all the EMAS system, and so we extended the surveys to EMAS competent bodies and environmental verifiers. The surveys were designed to be somehow specific for the actors involved, but also common. So it means that we designed some common parts that could be somehow compared at the end of the results that we got from the surveys. From a methodological point of view, we use SurveyMonkeys to deliver online the surveys from January to February 2022. And we use the EMAS-registered for involving European organizations, and environmental verifiers and competent bodies were contacted with the help of the entire consortium. Here I reported just an example of the structure of the EMAS organization survey. So as you can see, there were many different sections. One on the impact of COVID on the organization, for example, the impact on the activities, on the turnover, and other general questions. Then there was a section more related to what we call dynamic capabilities, so the capabilities that organization showed during the challenge. So we call this section the management of the organization. Some questions related to the environmental management system to see how it was affected, it has been affected from the pandemic, and then other section specific to the environmental performances of the organizations, circular economy, and also one section on environmental reputation of EMAS organization compared to non-EMAS organization. As you can see on the left, I put verifiers and competent bodies just to show you that there were some common parts. So, for example, in the first case, instead of the COVID impact on the organization, for the competent bodies, there would be the COVID impact on the competent body, and for the environmental verifiers, the COVID impact for environmental verifiers. The biggest survey, the widest survey was, again, the one of organizations. The others were somehow complementary to the results of the survey organizations. Okay, let's see the numbers. We got a high response rate. So concerning the organization, for example, we got a total of 383 respondents and a completion rate of basically 221 respondents. It means that starting from the initial number 323 to 281 people, respondents finished the survey completely. The completion rate was very high, 70%, and this was the case for all the surveys, so for organization, competent bodies, and verifiers. As you can see, we got a lot of answers for competent bodies, 39, even though we got no answers from Romania, the Netherlands, Ireland, Hungary, Greece, Cyprus, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Belgium. We divided the results according to the countries or the regions, in the case of Catalonia, involved in the consortium, in the project, and then the rest of Europe, which means all the other countries not involved in the project. To give you a quick example of the numbers of the survey on EMAS organizations, again, you can see on the top right that there was a good balance of organizations by size, so they were smaller organizations, but also larger organizations. And from a, let's say, NACE category point of view, the most involved organization were the one from the manufacturing sector, but also the ones from the financial and insurance sector. Also, public administration was quite involved. I'd like to go through all the different items and questions for all the three surveys, but this is not possible because of a lack of time. Here I report just an example of how the survey was designed. Specifically, this was a question related to the impact on the environmental management system, and as you can see, there are the different percentages on different items. For example, we see that on the item the pandemic has impact on the achievement of environmental objectives. We have that more than 50% agreed or strongly agreed on this item. So it means that the pandemic basically influenced impact on the achievement of environmental objectives. The same case, here I try to highlight some of the interesting items, but the same case happens for the item. The pandemic has reduced delayed involvement and training of employees, where basically more than 70%, if we consider the organization which agreed and which strongly agreed, basically said that more than 70% of organization reduced or delayed the involvement and training of employees. Another interesting aspect from our point of view is that basically 50% of organizations started to carry out external audits online, so third-party audits online. And then we will see how this is, let's say, perceived also from environmental verifiers, which are the ones who carried out those kind of audits. So since I can't go through all of them, I try to report the main conclusion from each survey. Talking about the survey on EMAS organizations, we see that EMAS were not, let's say, deeply affected in terms of activities and turnover from the COVID pandemic. So 50% were not affected in terms of activities. So it means that they carried out their regular activities as usual. And only 23% had a significant decrease in turnover, which means they lost more than 10% of the turnover. Obviously, here we are talking about only EMAS organizations. It's quite interesting that during the pandemic, 70%, so the largest majority of organizations, kept researching and developing activities, kept basically carry on human resources external collaboration, and also basically try to adopt changes in the governance or in the management of the operations to cope with the pandemic. Talking about the environmental management system, we see that the aspects that were most affected were the environmental risks to be identified by organization, the environmental objectives to be achieved, as I showed you before, also the monitoring of environmental aspects, but especially the training of employees. The training of employees was one of the most affected aspects, and more than 70% of organizations agreed on this. Talking about environmental aspects instead, we saw that the most affected were the waste management. How did the organization react? Basically, 56% of organizations started to carry out environmental trainings online, 42% started to carry out online internal audits, and 52% started to carry out online external audits. Also, the digitalization increased a lot. More than 50% said that indeed they did something to increase the digitalization. And also 40% changed operational procedures and kept some practices even after the end of some pandemic peaks. We also referred to circular economy and environmental reputation. We saw that half of the organization involved declared that they're trying to do something for the circular economy, specifically on the items that said that they're trying to close the loops, increase energy efficiency, and end-of-life practices. And one of the most important, at least from my point of view, aspect is that when asked the perception on environmental reputation, let's say let's say when we asked how EMAS was perceived compared to to organizations that were not involved in EMAS scheme, we saw that 50% perceived that EMAS improved public reputation, 42.3% declared that EMAS improved trust toward customers and suppliers, and 55% said that the image toward public authorities was basically increased, obviously, again, compared to non-EMAS organization. When we go instead talking about the environmental verifier competent bodies, concerning the environmental verifiers, we saw that obviously the most affected aspect was the activities carried out by verifiers, so third-party audits. And interesting, we saw that the different, let's say, the different diffusion of those activities before, during, and after the pandemic. Indeed, only 9% of verifiers declared that the audits were carried out online before the pandemic. 33% declared that they carried out complete audits online during the pandemic, and 60% declared that they carried out online audits even after the peaks of the pandemic, and that even 40% of them are willing to keep working remotely. Even though the diffusion of online audits is increasing, 52% of verifiers agreed that the audits from remote, so online audits, are less effective than standard ones. Talking about instead the competent bodies, we see that we basically try to understand which kind of exemptions and derogation were granted to EMAS companies in different countries of Europe. And we saw that basically 66% of EMAS competent bodies granted exemptions for the renewal of registration, 74% for the prolongation of verification cycles, which is basically the aspect with the highest percentage. Then we have basically 60% granted exemption for environmental declaration submission, and half of competent bodies surveyed declared that they granted exemption for remote audits. Now, it's interesting to go and compare the different perspectives of the three actors on the same topics, which was one of the main goals of the survey. Here we reported some of the items in a table, just for the sake of clarity and to be quick and concise. You can see on the columns the three actors, so organizations, verifiers, and competent bodies, and some items on the left. And obviously the agreement of those actors on the items. I try to highlight some of the items which show basically some discrepancies, some misalignments between the actors. For example, if we see the first item, which says EMAS allowed organization to better manage the environmental aspects in an emergency situation, we see that there is common agreement between organization and verifiers, but competent bodies perceived this item higher than the others. So 54% against 39%. This is even more evident when we go to the second highlighted item, which says the EMAS institution, in this case we mean EMAS competent bodies and verifiers, have proven to be willing to support organization in overcoming the impact of COVID on the EMAS system. There is a common agreement between organization and verifiers, 50%, 60%, but this percentage is way higher for competent bodies. So the perception that competent bodies had on this item is different from the ones had by the organization verifiers. Another interesting item is the fourth highlighted one. So after COVID-19 pandemic, organizations consider environmental management systems a more valuable tool than before. Here we see that verifiers agreed on this item, only 4% of verifiers agreed on this item, whereas 30% of organizations agreed on this. So there is a difference of 25%. But it's even more impressive, the item below, which says organization needed extension, derogation, or derogations from competent bodies to maintain the EMAS registration. And we see that basically 82% of competent bodies says that this was the case, so that organization needed those extensions to maintain the registration. But if we see the results from the organization, we see that only 30% of organization agreed on this. And here there is a huge gap. So the difference is it's basically 50%. It's more than 50%. So again, there is a huge discrepancies, and so on. Also for other items, even for the kind of extensions and derogation granted from competent bodies. The results from competent bodies, which is the item below, the results from competent bodies and organizations should be somehow the same, because organizations should be aware of the derogation extension granted from competent bodies. But basically there is again a discrepancies. I'm not going through all the items listed here, but there is a discrepancy of about 25% between what organization declare and what competent bodies declare. Again, a general question on sustainability matters, which says the pandemic has increased organization general interest in sustainability matters, sees a quite huge difference again between the three actors. Organizations said that basically there is a higher interest in sustainability matters. 40% of them agreed on this. See how low instead the verifiers, competent bodies, agreed on this. Only basically 16% and 14%. So this just to give an idea of the different perspectives of the actors of the EMAS system on the same aspects. Just to try to sum up, final consideration, the ENHANCE project carried out the first empirical analysis on the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the whole EMAS system. So basically we have empirical data that show some specific phenomena. Even though the numbers of responders is not extremely high, it's still very significant to draw some conclusions and to say that the EMAS system, at least the EMAS organization surveyed with our study, were not deeply affected by COVID pandemic. So we see from the items and the answers received that there was a certain degree of resilience, and that considering the reaction actions put in place, we see that okay, in addition to the exemption and derogation granted from competent bodies that obviously helped, but we saw that digitalization of all the EMAS activities is becoming more and more important. Obviously, from an environmental verifier point of view, it means carrying out online audits. But we saw that also organizations are trying to carry out online trainings, environmental trainings. They are trying to digitalize the environmental management system and so on. So this is one aspect that will be important. It is important now, and it will be even more in the future. And a last consideration is that the discrepancies and the misalignments that we saw between the three actors on some common aspects might be food for thought for, I'd say, EMAS competent bodies. So it might be interesting to understand why there were some discrepancies, and if you know, there might be more studies to investigate this phenomenon. And this is all, and thank you.
Sorry. Okay, Alessio, thank you so much for your presentation. The results obtained from the comparing the three surveys on common aspect and the different perception of some aspect between EMAS competent bodies and EMAS organization are very interesting, and we can further discuss during the open discussion, because we don't have much time. And so we are going to start with the third section, with the participation of the main actors involved in EMAS STEM. In this case, representative of EMAS competent bodies, EMAS verifiers, and EMAS-registered organizations will provide us some recommendations, experiences, and good practices adopted during the COVID crisis to face and recover from this crisis. Okay, without further delay, I give the floor to our first EMAS competent body. So, Ms. Hannah Slamach, when you want.
Yes, thank you very much. So, moment, please. Okay, no, I don't see you anymore. Here you are, and I will start my presentation. Sorry for the delay. So my name is Jana Slamaj, and since 2006, I work in the Environment Agency Austria, and since 2008, my main responsibility, or I primarily work for EMAS. In my presentation, I want to first give you an overview of the activities of the Environmental Agency Austria regarding EMAS on a national level and on an international level. And then I will talk about the impact of the corona crisis on our activities. Okay, so the Environment Agency Austria is the competent body for EMAS, and we are responsible for managing the EMAS register. So we check the requirements for each EMAS organization, for each application. We read the environmental statements of the EMAS-registered organizations, and we also serve as contact point for inquiries of organizations, verifiers, authorities, etc. Our main aim is to disseminate EMAS in Austria. Therefore, we provide information to potential EMAS organizations. So if an organization is interested in implementing EMAS, they can ask us, and we provide information. We talk to these organizations. We provide information about funding opportunities or give guidance on the first steps for implementing EMAS. And then we also organize workshops. We have mainly two kinds of workshops. The first workshops is a workshop series for EMAS beginners, and these last for 3 days. And within these workshops, the organizations interested in implementing EMAS can learn how to implement EMAS, and they also start to implement EMAS, or the environment management system, in their company. And before Corona, we carried out these workshops on site, so at the Environment Agency Austria, for example, or at another company. But now these workshops are carried out on a virtual basis. And then we also carry out workshops for EMAS stakeholders. For example, tomorrow there will be a big workshop for changing experiences around EMAS with more than 100 participants. Then we also support our accreditation body, which is in our case the Ministry for Climate Protection. We support them in implementing EMAS within their ministry, but we also support them in international activities around the peer review or current environmental issues like the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. So this is also a main task of the Environment Agency Austria, of the EMAS team here. And then our yearly highlight is the EMAS conference in Austria. This conference focuses on EMAS and current environmental issues. And within this conference, the Environmental Management Awards are given in 2 categories. The first category is the best environmental statement, and the second category is the best measures in environmental and climate protection. And this is really a highlight of the year, and we work very hard on this. And this year it will take place in October in Salzburg. Yes, and then we work in different international projects like the EU EMAS Help Desk. Here we are part of a consortium, and we are responsible for managing the EMAS register and for developing the EMAS register. And we also answer inquiries from the Commission, from competent bodies, accreditation bodies, and also organizations. And then we also organize and administer the peer reviews of the EMAS accreditation and licensing bodies. And of course, we are project partner of this ENHANCE project. So this is a short overview of our activities regarding EMAS. And now I will come to the impact of the Corona crisis on our activities. And starting in March 2020, when we from one day to another, we were not allowed to go to the office anymore. So we had to reorganize everything, our life, our family life, with the work life. And I think we all experienced these new circumstances within the pandemic. But I think after a few days or a few weeks, we got comfortable staying at home and working from home. And we have reorganized our family life. And the first measure which was taken from the ministry was to send out a letter to the EMAS organizations and the EMAS Verifiers with the possibility to extend the deadline for submitting the next environmental statements for up to 5 months. And the prerequisite for this was just an informal email to us, to the competent body, with a brief justification why this organization needed an extended deadline. So this was really a quick and a fast help for the organizations, and the organizations were glad that we provided such an unbureaucratic help. So they just wrote an email that they needed more time for submitting the next environmental statement or for conducting the next audit. And we noted it in an EMAS register, and that's it. So in this time, in the first weeks of the pandemic, we really had a lot of contact to the organizations, and the organizations were glad that we provided them support and help. And then we also had to reorganize our work, because in March and April 2020, the first meetings were just cancelled. Also on European level, because nobody had much experiences with virtual conferences. So they were just not taking place. But then we were also got used to hybrid and virtual conferences, and then we were still working at home, but we had the technical equipment from our company, and then virtual meetings were possible. And we got comfortable in having all those meetings and conferences and workshops on a virtual basis. And we really had we really received positive feedback from the participants. For example, the EMAS workshops for EMAS stakeholders, before Corona, we had about 20 or 30 participants on site. But with the virtual workshops, we have now more than 100 participants. So this is really an advantage of these virtual meetings. And we save a lot of time because we don't have travel. We don't need time for traveling, and we also save costs. So I think this is a really good opportunity to have those virtual meetings. And I think this is my impression that communication with video conferences is also more effective and faster. So you just make a meeting and you can discuss it on a fast basis, so it's very quick. And yeah, so we really made very good experiences with virtual meetings. And also our big conference with more than 250 participants were held on a hybrid basis. So there were a few participants in the meeting room, but it was also streamed via the internet. And we reached about 250 or 300 participants. Yeah, but we also recognized some disadvantages, as you may know, because there is a lack of personal interactivity. You don't see that the person's in real. You can't chat like you see each other from face to face. So the networking is not that nice than in real. Okay, then I will come to my last slide. Here you can see the development of the EMAS organizations in Austria. The number of organizations is quite stable. It's about between 250 and 270 organizations, but the number of sites is rising. And you can see that from the beginning of the crisis, so from 2020 on, the numbers are still rising. So we did not lose any organizations because of the Corona crisis. And now we've got we've got 1,280 organizations, and we still register new organizations. So this is a very good sign. And in my view, so this is nothing what I can where I've got statistics or anything like that, but it's my opinion that EMAS organizations are more resilient to the crisis because they have set up processes for emergency situations. And some organizations have also developed new strategies or new products to face the Corona crisis. But what I can assess as competent body is, for example, the quality of the environmental statement, because we read every environmental statement. And in the last 2 years, the quality was still high and it is still rising. So I cannot see any negative impact on EMAS in Austria. And we are still successful. And yeah, with that positive impact or positive impression, I would also like to close my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, Hannah, thank you so much. From my point of view, it's very relevant and interesting that despite of the efforts and measures adopted by the EMAS competent bodies to facilitate EMAS registration during the COVID pandemic, it's very interesting. The perception of EMAS companies very different. I don't know, but it's very, very curious. I don't know, because I agree with Hannah that EMAS organizations are more resilient, prepare for emerging situations, develops new strategies and products. And I don't know, we can discuss about this during the open discussion, but from my point of view, it's very, very interesting, the different perception between competent bodies and EMAS organization. Okay, Virginia, when you want, you can share your screen. Okay.
¿La pantalla?
Yes.
Yes. Es que no la voy a ver. ¿Veis la pantalla?
You can share in PDF.
Wait a moment. Wait. It's okay now? Yes? No?
No.
No. Sorry. Equivocado. Sorry, Harry. It's okay now?
Yes.
Vale, me oís bien, ¿no? Good morning, everyone. My name is Virginia Ferrer Vidal. I represent together with Maria Jose and Josep Maria, the competent body from Catalonia. And today I'm going to make a short presentation on the measures that, as competent body, we adopt to respond to the situation generated by the COVID crisis. We have seen that in the situation of a strict lockdown and at the peak of the pandemic, the response of the most of competence bodies has been that activities have been partially affected and to a lesser extent have not been affected at all. And the percentage in relation to a total stoppage of activities has been very low. In our case, during the weeks of COVID lockdown in Catalonia, our activities were partially affected. And as a competent body, we have supported organization in overcoming the impact of COVID in everything that could affect the EMAS registration procedure. I will not go into the issues in relation to the process of evaluating the system at the most critical point of the pandemic, as we will deal with this issue in the following presentation, but I will briefly outline how the Catalonia competent body has acted in different aspects in the period of crisis. The exemption offered applied to EMAS organization during the COVID pandemic have applied to the fields of renewal of EMAS registration, the extending of cycle of internal audits and verification audits, and extension of the submission of environmental declaration. But in this field, the decision in each topic was taken on a case-by-case basis. And in the field of the remote audits, the verifier and the company agreed on how to proceed. We have considered that if the auditor has the necessary tools to ensure the conformity of the audit process and validates the documentation, it should be a guarantee to accept a remote audit. In this respect, we have maintained close communication with the verification entities. The number of EMAS registration in February in this year are 231 and 628 sites. The number of registration has decreased by 3% since the start of the pandemic in 2020. However, there has been an increase of 27% in the number of sites. This is a value that does not represent in any way, in our opinion, that EMAS has been radically affected by the crisis. As a competent body, we have observed that the industrial sectors that have been the most affected by COVID in Catalonia and the most difficulties in managing EMAS has been the hotel sector, basically the tourism sector, but so far only one company has deregistered from EMAS. The sectors that have contributed to new EMAS-registered organization in 2021 has been transport and waste management. The environmental declaration of the organization has incorporated, is a question we think is interesting, has incorporated reference to the COVID crisis related aspects. For example, how the period of confinement was addressed, how the system has responded or adapted to teleworking tools, or the identification and assessment of environmental aspects arising from the new situation. And also comment on a change that we are perceiving with interest in this period, that some companies have taken the opportunity to implement the digitalization of the environmental declaration. But for the moment, there are a few companies, but the upward trend is clear. The result in this sense has been very interesting, as the environmental declaration is presented in an intuitive and easily accessible manner for any stakeholder who wants to consult them. The actions that we have taken as a competent body, more action, has been the assistance and support to EMAS organization during 2020 in the electronic processing of the EMAS registration. We have worked together to solve any doubts that may arise during the process. And this has speeded up the processing of registration, maintenance of certification or renewal. Sorry. The information to EMAS organization on the measures given by the Commission regarding the verification and validation of the EMAS registration for the verifications and on-site visits that could not be carried out due to the containment measure and should be rescheduled at a later date. Organizations were also informed on ENAC's position. ENAC is the Spanish National Accreditation Body on remote audits. The fact that organizations have been able to carry out remote audits, the extension of deadlines and the registration, renewal or maintenance of certification could be done entirely electronically from home, and so has meant that the EMAS registration was not stopping during the time of confinement. And I can present now the actions to promote EMAS to face the crisis from Catalonia, from the competent body. We want here to comment the most significant points. A proposal in these days under evaluation by the Economic Management Authority to increase the budget for subsidies for EMAS implementation or renewal for small and medium enterprises in this year, 2022. We have considered that it's necessary to support EMAS organizations that have made great efforts to maintain a voluntary certification, despite the economic crisis caused by the health crisis in the last 2 years. In this, the close contact with our EMAS organization and verification body during the 2 years of the pandemic has revealed the difficulty, especially for small and medium enterprises, of maintaining the EMAS system in this scenario of economic crisis. Especially the economic needs of this kind of enterprise, the companies, mean that the proposal for a call for grants for 22 has been increased by 80% in order to support the implementation and maintenance of EMAS. On the other hand, to reinforce this proposal, we consider that it is necessary to maintain EMAS in particular to support the promotion of environmental policies to implement the 2030 agenda in Catalonia and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Another action to promote the EMAS has been the commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the EMAS registration. The last year, to commemorate this anniversary of the EMAS registration, we organized a special event to which some EMAS organizations were invited, with 2 clear objectives: to recognize those companies that have been registered in EMAS for more years, and to promote EMAS as a tool for the promotion and implementation of circularity criteria in process, especially efficient in the current situation of recovery from the crisis. Another important action now, we are working now, is through the ENHANCE project. We are working for the promotion and the consideration of EMAS in the circular economy roadmap of Catalonia. We are currently working with the authority of this regional policy instrument to introduce EMAS in different levels of the roadmap. This action of the green interest is of green interest for us, since it will consider EMAS in some of the roadmap levels, which will mean to position EMAS in a strategical manner in this clearly transversal regional instrument. In this action, we want to present it in more detail in a specific enhanced workshop in the next month. That's all, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, Virginia, thank you so much. A lot of measures for EMAS to face and recover from the COVID crisis has been adopted in Catalonia. Congratulations. Okay, now it's time for EMAS verifiers. I don't know if Mr. Edelio is here or not.
Hello, I'm here finally.
Okay, Edelio, welcome.
Good morning, Edelio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Edelio will share with us the main instruction and recommendations provided by ENAC as a national accreditation entity. Okay, Mr. Edelio Gago, when you want, you can share your screen.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. I'm trying to share my screen right here. Here. I suppose that you can see the full screen. Okay, is that right?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I try to be brief on that. This is the presentation of the national accreditation body in Spain, SENAC. As you know, it is in line with the European regulation of accreditation that we are in charge of the accreditation in every member state. My intention here is just to give you an idea of the situation that we suffer during the COVID crisis, of course, in respect to the EMAS registration. We have, from the very beginning of the EMAS history, we have a technical committee in ENAC called the Technical Advisory Committee for EMAS. We have another Technical Advisory Committee for other conformity assessment activities, but we, from the very beginning, saw the need for a technical committee for the EMAS accreditation of verifiers. This committee, just let me remark that comprise representation of interested parties. I mean, of course, there is representation of the Spanish Environmental Ministry. Of course, there is representation of the regional competent bodies. Catalonia, of course, is there, and other, let me say, nearly 17 competent bodies that we have in Spain. We have registered companies. We have the EMAS Club that some of you already know. We have, of course, the verifiers and so on and so forth. So this committee is just aimed at discussing technical issues, not policy issues, no administrative or governmental issues, just technical issues for the accreditation of EMAS verifiers. Okay, at the very beginning of the COVID crisis in March 2020, we received the first of the letters from the Commission. It really came to our attention at the very beginning of the crisis. It was March 2020, so we just were suffering the worst situation of the pandemic. Nobody knows how to react. Nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how it's going to land or to last. Finally, so when we went through the test of the standard, we were trying to look for solutions, but we couldn't find any. I mean, Okay, the main idea, the test of the Commission talk about postponing verification activities, talk about extending the validity of the EMAS registration, but it's something that we know now. When we first went through this test, nobody in the committee, let me say, I want to be clear with that, nobody understood the real aim of the test. I mean, we were present, so verifiers, the industry, the competent bodies, and so on. No one across more than 10 people present in the committee really know what is the final end of this test. So this test was a little bit, let me say, a black box for us, because start talking about verification, but finally the only measures are related with the registration. So we were not able to understand that. This is what is state here, and we want to be very clear with that. So what was our decision there? We knew that, for example, the Italian colleagues are suffering the pandemic, the COVID pandemic before us, 1 or 2 months in advance. So we knew what is going to happen. So we knew that we have to adopt strong measures, as we say, for big problems, you need big solutions. So we were, we were trying to agree big solutions, and the committee agreed to write down some, we call it guidelines, but really are not guidelines. These are clear instructions and criteria. I mean, it's absolutely a new area of how to perform verification. And we agreed to use, as far as possible, information and technology solutions, but not on a horizontal and general way. The verifier was expected to obtain information about every one of the companies, specific and particular information of every one of the registered companies, perform and risk analysis. I mean, according to the documentation and the information, reach a conclusion about if the organization still deserve to be registered, if the organization still maintain activity. Of course, I would say it is the number one situation. If they maintain the activity, if they do not have disappeared, and obtain this information, perform a risk analysis, and based on the result of this risk analysis, only when the result of this risk analysis shows, let me say, low risk situation, perform verification using, let me say, Teams, Zoom, any other tool like that, as we are doing that today. We know that this is not clearly covered, let me say, by the European regulation. We knew that that we were taking some risk. We were taking some risk. We know that we have to have some limits in order not to endanger the harmonization of the understanding of EMAS across Europe. But in the other hand, we have around 8,050 registration and nearly 1,000 sites. So something has to be done. We cannot leave all of that companies, workers, people, users. We cannot leave them, let me say, lay down or fall down in that moment. This was the main intention behind our decisions. So this is why we drafted this instruction. Of course, the instructions were discussed with all the parties. We all agree on that. This is a consensus position. The guidelines were, of course, made publicly available to all the verifiers and to all the interested parties for accreditation. The guidelines, I want to be clear with that, only mention the verification needed for the renewal of the registry. So do not allow new verifications to verification for new registrations, let me say, to make use of that remote verification, let me say. So it's just oriented to the verification needed for renewal of the registration. The guidelines are very clear on that. And okay, that was the situation. After that, we have a fall meeting. You know, this is the meeting, the committee created by the EMAS regulation to put together and to share information and read some guidelines from the accreditation and licensing bodies across Europe, where the Commission is also present. In this meeting around October 2020, we reached the possibility for a new understanding of the first letter of the Commission just by discussing with the rest of the colleagues and with the Commission. We made aware that probably the first letter was not perfectly understood, and that the letter is depicting a new situation. So after in this moment in time, the Commission also issue what we call the second letter that consider the COVID pandemic as a force majeure situation. So situation by situation, organization by organization, and case by case, the competent body can decide some alleviation measures for the verification by case by case. Okay, and after that situation, in this fall meeting also, it was very clear that the understanding of the first letter of the Commission was very different from member state to member state. We normally discuss all of this situation, and when you hear the colleagues talking, and when you hear the Commission, and when you hear all the people present there, the first letter of the Commission was not exactly understood in the same way in all the member states. So as far as I understood, it was not only the Spanish case, let me say, we were not alone in the failure, let me say. And when this information I came back, we meet again in the advisory committee in November 2020, and we try to align with the real understanding of the letter of the Commission. So we modify our guidelines, we introduce the real aim of the first letter, that is something like the situation is frozen until all prohibitions and limitations to movement and so on in the member state disappear. This frozen situation was not understood at the very beginning when we first read the letter. So we modify our guidelines in order to enter and to introduce the real aim of the letter of the Commission, but we maintain the use of the technology and information, the communication and information technologies for the use of verification. We maintain the possibility of remote verification for renewals, or only for renewal verification, because in this moment it was agreed that we're helping all of us to maintain the EMAS registration. So we maintain these measures. And what is the situation today? That after this committee, this technical advisory committee used to meet twice a year, normally in May and November every year. So the committee has decided always by consensus of all the interested parties present there. The committee has decided to maintain these guidelines in order to use remote verification. Okay, and the measures are still them. I suppose that in the next meeting, we all are going to probably decide that the situation is has changed. Luckily, let me say, luckily the situation has changed, and that we do not need anymore these specific situations. So the situation today is that the measures are still them. We are still allowing for this remote verification. And just as a conclusion of this brief situation, what we want to underline and to remark is that in a body like that, in a tool like that, with interested parties, with the representation of the authorities, a very good representation of the authorities, I have to say that we were clearly we know clearly that it is the intention and the willing of the authorities to do that. Okay, it is want to be very clear with that. So this technical committee with the representation of the interested parties has been a very useful tool for that, even when the real owner of the scheme, that is the Commission, have sent their own instruction or guidelines, but in that case we were not able to understand the real aim of the instruction of the Commission. Even they were, let me say, soon and just in time and in time. This was the first meeting is March 2020, but we were not able to understand. So our technical committee means a very good tool in order to agree on some measures, let me say, at the lower level, at the member state level. And finally, even in one of the fall meetings, we hear the Commission saying that if the measures were agreed at the member state level, were agreed between verifiers, accreditation body and competent bodies and the authorities, of course, the measures were allowed. No problem with at the member state level, all the relevant parties agreed on a measure, and that's what we do at the very beginning of the situation. So I would say that thanks God we adopt technical measures in order to maintain the EMAS registration in Spain, and the measures really demonstrated that were useful for that aim. So thank you very much. I want to be brief with that. I am, of course, open to any question. I will try to answer as far as possible. And thank you. Let me say hello to some of you, to all of you, excuse me. Thank you very much.
Okay, Adelu, thank you so much for your contribution. I'm very happy to know that the accreditation entities and the European Commission have been in close collaboration and have been coordinated, and the instruction provided by both has been in the same way. It's a pleasure to have a homogeneous criteria between accreditation entities and European Commission. And now we will see if the measure provided by the European Commission will be extended beyond May 2022. Okay, Mr. Harry, representative of Estonian partners, and on behalf of EMAS Verifier in Estonia, when you want, you can share your screen.
I hope you see my screen already, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So and you see my face also, hopefully. Okay, thanks, Aurora. Yes, you all know that Estonia is a small country, and then of course our EMAS ecosystem is also very small. So we have only few EMAS Verifiers, they are extremely busy. Unfortunately, they couldn't participate our event today. They had to do their auditing work, so they gave possibility for me to reflect some of their basically some of their experiences related to overall process of EMAS verification during this COVID time. But what I would like to say, COVID is not only, let's see if I can go on with this. I need Evelyn's help as always. Evelyn always helps me with this. This is her computer, and actually she prepared those slides. So I try to do my best to share, as I said, Evelyn's creation and our verificator's contribution. But it's very clear that if we talk about COVID impact, this is not the only issue that the EMAS system had to cope here in Estonia. Thanks to the ENHANCE project, actually, we created a small EMAS renaissance in Estonia. As you know, the impact of our project was very positive. There were several successful policy measures implemented, and the interest towards EMAS increased significantly. So basically, during this COVID time, we had to cope with COVID-related obstacles. But at the same time, the number of companies increased significantly, those who were interested to implement, but also, of course, the verification and registration process or the system had to cope with that. Before that, of course, we had only a few companies, and the capacity both from authority sides, competent body side, as well as from verifier side was quite small. Anyway, let's start from COVID impact first. In Estonia, again, compared to several other countries in European Union, our COVID situation was relatively mild. We didn't have very significant lockdowns, only very short time periods where the society was closed in a way. Short time in spring 2020 and then last spring. I would say the first lockdown, since the situation was unclear, it was more significant, and the second wave last spring was much more milder. So this is also one of the reasons why this COVID impact wasn't very significant. Of course, especially during the first COVID wave, the remote audits were applied. But all in all, according to verifiers, there were no needs to do the audit fully as a remote audit. Basically, since the lockdown period was short, it was possible to plan the on-site visits in all companies. So basically, and the other issue which made the remote audits easy was, of course, the situation here in Estonia, where there is a very high level of electronic and basically the documentation system as well as communication system is well developed here in Estonia. So to switch to Teams and also for companies to present their documentation in an electronic version was relatively easy. Only few companies had this project, but this problem. But in a way, this is clear learning from the COVID. But we can see this has also pushed companies to go even more electronic when it comes to the communication habits as well as trainings. And this is actually the training issue is also something which was highlighted also here in Estonia. Of course, the first reaction was a little bit like melting down, especially when it comes to the company level activities related to involvement of people, training and capacity building. But clearly, again, being very smooth and well developed in this electronic system, I think most of the companies as well as verifiers coped very well and the learning was quick. So basically, basically it was quite easy to adapt into this digital and electronic manner of doing audits and also communicating between different stakeholders in the system. So that's why I would say in Estonia the impact of COVID was relatively mild, but the second impact more related to ENHANCE project and the very rapid increase of new companies implementing EMAS as well as wanting to register it in the same time. This was, I would say, even a bigger challenge. But altogether with COVID impact, I think it created certain problems for the system. First of all, of course, lack of capacity, especially when it comes to the number of verifiers, but not only, also very clearly the competent body wasn't ready for such a high number of new companies wanting to register it. Just maybe it's worth to once again mention the main measures that had a most significant impact and motivated the companies to go for EMAS. Maybe it's worth to mention them. I would say the most important measure was the reduction of financial guarantees for EMAS-registered waste management companies. And this is one of the reasons why I would say in Estonia, most of the waste management companies now have either already implemented registered or they are in the process of implementing EMAS scheme. And also for other companies, relief of energy audit requirement for EMAS-registered companies had certain impact, and there are few bigger companies, especially hospitals, those who are really clearly also benefiting out of this relief. So, as I said, lack of verifiers and capacity among the verifiers community. As I said earlier, we had only basically one company who did the verification. Now the number of verifiers has been increased. Lack of capacity of competent body. Again, this was one of the biggest obstacles, what I would say. And then, of course, COVID situation in a way slowed down the communication pathways between verifiers and competent body. There is no real problem when it comes to registration and other documentation, because in Estonia already quite a long time we have had very electronic systems, so there is no such problem when it comes to submitting something, signing something, and so on and so on. This in a way also delayed an auditing process, and as I said, partly it was also because of COVID, but mainly because of a huge number of applications and new companies going for EMAS. This also created problem when it comes to the time gap between registration and EMAS statement. We clearly see that since the process now took quite long time, basically companies wanted to, or they have their data and statement prepared for certain year, but since the whole process of verification, registration has been taken much more time. I mean, there is a certain time gap between the data that they have to publish and also the way when they get the registration. So this has been getting a bit better, but still there are certain issues, maybe partly also impacted by COVID, but mainly because we didn't have earlier so much experiences, especially when it comes to legal compliance. COVID has, I would say, also implemented this now, but companies, especially in waste management sector, they have certain legal issues always up there and certain disputes and issues with control and enforcement authorities. And this whole process has been very, very long. So when verifiers have taken their steps, they never know whether since the verification process, the registration process is quite long now, they are not sure whether companies will have some new issues up there when it comes to legal compliance. And this has also created certain problems. But this is more up to the better, let's say, more improved communication, because in the very beginning of this process, this wasn't very clear. Information was not there, and verifiers were suffering of not having enough information, and also the communication with the competent body wasn't maybe so good. And this is something which now has, in a way, improved, and there is a clear need to harmonize this process. It's partly because of, for Estonia, it was something new, but as I said, COVID also had certain impact into that. So overall, better communication, electronic system for documentation control, as well as auditing, all these kind of new aspects which were in Estonia relatively well already developed. Actually, also, I think are certain learning points where we all actually have to look on and maybe improve. And in general, I would say all parties in this system, in a way, don't see the remote auditing as a major problem. I would say maybe this is something which will remain for a certain extent, for a certain level of auditing. And maybe this is also good if we do it in a proper way. This definitely helps to reduce the impacts, environmental impacts of auditing process itself, and so on and so on. So this is shortly all from my side.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ari. Estonia is also in line with the European Commission and accreditation entities. But in the case of Estonia, it's relevant to highlight the lack of verifiers and capacity of competent bodies to cover all this extraordinary situation derived from the COVID crisis. Okay, let's go. We are going to start with the experiences provided by EMAS-registered organization, because we don't have so time. And now EMAS-registered organization will provide their point of view about how they have reacted to face and recover from the COVID crisis. Okay, Mr. Giuseppe, when you want.
Thank you, Aurora. I will share my screen.
Giuseppe, please reduce your presentation as soon as possible, because we don't have much time. I want to open discussion about all presentation.
Okay, I will be very short. And do you see my presentation? Or...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's very short because it's almost lunchtime in some countries in Europe. It's breakfast time here in Barcelona. It's our experience. It's a project that is now we are working on. It's about implementing EMAS in buildings of public administration to improve the efficiency resources. The most important thing is that it's included. This project is included in the government plan. Of the last year, we had elections. So in the government plan, they introduce to promote the environment management systems in public buildings. It's important because it's a political commitment. Now, all the technicians, we are working on this project, but there is a political commitment. And why they put this to implement this implementation in the buildings, in the public buildings? There are some global goals. Everybody knows that we have the sustainable development goals. So in buildings, we can develop goals like affordable and clean energy, responsible consumption and production, and to work on climate action. Also, we have the European goals. Everybody knows the Green Deals. The European goals are important because we have a very it's far in the time, but I think it's not easy to get. It's we have to be carbon neutral by 2050. So we have to start to work. So the buildings are the buildings in general had a huge consumption of resources. So it's very important to implement EMAS because it's a very good tool to be more efficient. Also, the European the Green Deal also is working in other issues that are important to include in an environment management system in the public administration, like circular economy or mobility or something like this. This situation to implement environment management system is important because also can help us to manage the COVID situation, because now in the COVID situation we have to be, of course, resource efficient. We have to work sometimes in digitalization because some procedures, our relationship between administration and citizens now all the paper has disappeared. So we have been to digitalize our procedures. That is very important because our buildings we are now has to be different from before the buildings before COVID. We have to reorganize our spaces, especially because now we are doing teleworking. So we no need to stay all the people at the same time. So maybe in a building we can work more people than to fill the building. We can work more people than before because we haven't shared some spaces. The spaces we have to design. We need more meeting rooms, small meeting rooms. So we are working in our project of implementing EMAS. We are also working in the design of new spaces, and of course the situation has reduced the mobility. Of course, we have to be an example for all the company to implement this tool that will help to be more efficient and will help to work to change our lineal economy to a circular economy. How we are what are we including in EMAS because EMAS is an empty tool. We have to fill it, so we can include some things like energy efficiency, CO2 reductions. We can introduce in an environment management system green and circular public procurement, like we can introduce some clauses in the green services like maintenance, cleaning services, and the consumption of products, and the sustainable mobility, the best environmental practices in buildings, and also organizing green events. Now we are organizing telematic events, but I think that the green events, the on-site events are coming again. How we are doing this project? We have 3 working groups. One is to train the responsible people in the buildings. So this training course are for facility manager, environmental responsibles, energy managers. In May, we are preparing the first training course. Also, it's important to have the tool. The tool, as normally some of the environment management systems, the tool normally is made with very simple tools like Excel or Access or Microsoft simple tools. We are working in a new tool that it will include some packages. Existing packages, because some buildings are working in energy efficiency, in the monitoring of CO2, but also we are designing with what are the packages we need. And of course, we are studying the market, because we are looking for the existing tools that we can prepare. And finally, we are doing some networking experiences between ministries that already had implemented an EMAS. And of course, and in these experiences, we had in three weeks ago, we had a presentation from the Commission from the implementation of EMAS in environmental institutions. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jose, thank you so much. It's a very good example for public administration to promote EMAS as a tool for efficiency resources. It's clear that EMAS will allow to improve circular economy, digitalization, resource efficiency, and so on. It's a very good news to have selected EMAS as a tool to cover all these aspects. Congratulations, it's a good example. And without further delay, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Simon. Simon is a CEO of Holu System Jiayin from Austria. Simon, when you want, you can share your screen.
You should see my screen. Does it work?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Simon. I'm the CEO of Holu. And I give you a brief part of a really tense time. The last 2 years were a big challenge for all of us. And also for us. I write a diary since March 2020. And if I read in this diary, it sounds sometimes like a thriller or something like that. So what is Holu? Holu is typical family-run business, Austrian company, international. We have 450 employees. Turnover before Corona, 64 million euro. And March this year, we are very positive that we can reach this turnover again, first time. We have a subsidiary in Italy, in Leifers. We have branch offices throughout Austria. We have a new company in Switzerland. This company starts in April the 1st. It's a new company, and we have partnerships in the world, I would say, in each part of the world. What is our business? We produce cleaning agents. We produce disinfectants, and we deliver these whole systems directly to our customers. Our customers are hotel and restaurant sector, healthcare, nursing homes, schools, and food and beverage as well. And we have in each division specialists who works only in this target group, in these sectors that we fulfill customer needs. That's what we do. Very quick and very brief. Hollow is a company who have integrated all 17 sustainable development goals direct in our company strategy. So we work on sustainability very structured and is part of our DNA, I would say. And in this slide, you see different certifications, what we have as company on the left side. On the right side, you can see product certificates and tests. And you can also see EMAS, for example. We are EMAS-registered since more than 20 years in parts of our company, and since, I would say, 10 years is the whole company registered. Here is EMAS. We won the most famous prize for CSR responsibility in Austria 3 times. So I only tell you that to show that sustainability is normal for us, is our daily business. And no, it's not a problem as chemical industry work on sustainability, work on SDGs. It's very important that especially sectors or companies like we work on these things. Yeah, and then was Corona. This picture show you the turnover breakdown of our company. Hotel and restaurant, 55% of our turnover, the most important group for us. This was before Corona. And then the 13th of March, I don't know whether this breaking news was so famous that you heard that before. Sant'Anna is, and Paznaun is our famous valleys in Tyrol. And yeah, the valleys were put in quarantine and guests had to leave the region so far as possible. And that was the situation. Our authorities announced a Corona aid package in a height of 4 billion euro, and the hope was yeah, available or was current that we can reach or we can deal with this big challenge. And one day later, with an original picture, we had a crisis meeting. Our vice president board worked on Sunday, the whole Sunday, the whole Monday night, and we developed yeah, a master plan, a 4-step escalation plan, how we can go through this not plain, not calculable time what we are facing. And these steps of escalation had four parts. The first was the safety net. So the first measure was to save our liquidity, to be very careful with investment and so on. And the second step was rescue measures. The first step, you will never reach as CEO a step like that. That was would be the financial recovery, and the last one, the insolvency. And I'm happy to say that we never reached the second step. So we came through this whole time with our safety net strategy. What was to do with our employees, and what were some measures we started immediately? We checked and determine the most necessary human resources. What employees, what part of our company has to be run that we have a chance to come through this tense time. We analyzed home office possibilities, and you can see from our more than 400 employees, the half of our employees, for them was it not possible to work at home. Parts of the logistics center, parts of the production, all of them, they had to work, and we produce disinfection products. So we are a critical infrastructure, hotels and nursing homes and so on. They needed our products. We started part-time working, and we reduced outstanding overtime and left them consumed. That was the total strange situation. Our sales reps could not work because all sectors were closed. And in our production, we had incredible amount to produce. So we started shift working, and we worked in 3 shifts. We have to ensure delivery, to deliver on hotels and restaurants, and also to retailers and hospitals. And we started communication campaign, I would say, that our employees are always on the current news, and they know what we expect and what we do. And as I mentioned before, liquidity to protect was very, very important. And that was the turnover after 3 months. On the left side, you see before the Corona crisis, 54% HoReCa, and then public sector, 50%. Hospitals, so a total shift of the business into 3 months. Hotel restaurant was only 4% of our turnover. And we lost 12 million euro in this 3 months. That was the first period. Our product group shifted totally. That was the increase in laundry products, in paper and dispenser and towels, and we lost a lot, and we won a lot of turnover in surface disinfection and hand disinfection and so on. But all together, we lost 12 million euro. Hollow is worth protecting a company in the opinion of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Ministry of Economics. That was very important for us because we got access to raw materials. If we don't have had these letters, it was much more difficult for us to produce our products. It was very important that we got from the different ministry these letters that we are worth protecting company, a critical infrastructure. That helped us a lot. We started with different updates to our employees, as I mentioned before, and I made more than 30 video messages. We informed our employees daily how our turnover is developing. And you can see the red line. The red line was the critical line to start the next step of our crisis plan. Each day was the information to our employees. We worked together. We helped us together. It was so nice for me to see how employees works together. The vice president board helped installing the disinfection equipment. We started a campaign to help our customers to restart their business. And we started with education for our customers how they work in hygiene topics in the COVID-19 time. So it was a very, very brief, only small part of the last 2 years. As I said before, it's more or less a thriller, but with good end.
Okay, Simon, congratulations, because another very, very good practice, in this case from private sector, and also when the sector has been one of the sector more affected by COVID pandemic. And again, congratulations, because it's very, very good practice. Okay.
And what I would add very short, EMAS helped us in this time. Because we had risk analysis and so on, all things what is necessary, and we had a basic to work on it. So EMAS was very helpful in this time.
Okay, perfect. It's a pity, but we don't have time to open the discussion, but if all of us want, we can extend the time for 10 minutes. If you have any question or you need more clarification, some presentation. Do you agree to extend the time for 10 minutes? Okay, I see that Tiberio has made a question in the chat for Ms. Detri. And Tiberio said, taking into account that the digital transition is an objective of the European, at the fact that the survey show how COVID has stimulated the digitalization of some activities of environmental management system. Are you thinking to include some suggestions on how to push this process, or publish guidelines, or put some reference to this in the future?
Yeah, yes, thank you for reading out again. Right, it's not easy to reply to that shortly, but of course, the EU is very interested that processes get more digitalized. But I have the impression that's more something that is done on member state level. I remember when we presented, or the Norwegians presented their digital system. During the last committee, I didn't have the impression that member states were all so excited about taking over the systems, like on an EU level or so, but that many member states already worked on their national systems, and that some are very well implemented already, so they wouldn't be too happy if we would now come from the top to come with some EU system. And I must say, I mean, the EMAS regulation doesn't prevent member states to do this as digital as they like. The only requirement right now is the one that they have the verifiers to come on site every year. But as I said in my presentation, we had also discussions about that before. I'm open, or I would say the Commission is open to change this requirement. If we had the impression that the majority of the competent body or the verifiers in the member states agrees with this 100% remote approach, for example, but also the survey, I found, I mean, there was 51% of the verifiers that said, I don't remember which one of the one positions, but they said that it would ensure the good quality. And so there's a 50-50 already, again, position of the verifiers that say, yes, it would be good or it would not be good to get rid of this on-site part. So I think that there's still a need for discussion on that part. But all the other points of the registration process and everything, of course, it would be much more easy to do this with digital ways. So that's what I can say at the moment.
Okay. Edelio, I don't know if the guideline to carry out the online audit is available to the rest all state members, or only is applicable to Spanish EMAS verifiers? Because it will a better option to share this guideline with other state members or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, this is not really a guide, a practical document on how to perform. This is just a set of criteria on the possibility to do that. I don't have any problem. I can try to first translate into English and send it to you if you want. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Any questions, some clarification? Okay. Maria Jose, do you want to close the interregional meeting then?
Bueno.
if any have questions.
Okay, I think it should be, bueno, we have all of us, it has been a very interesting conference, bueno, meeting, because we have shared a lot of experiences, very interesting, and I think all of us, we have the aim to improve in EMAS, working to advance in a better implementation of EMAS in Europe. We are EMAS lovers here, and we hope that instead of the crisis, we can advance in the implementation of EMAS in Europe. And I would like to agree our contributions, our explanations, and our and to be here all the meeting. We have a little big time than the previous time. We're thinking, no, 2 hours, but thank you very much for your patience and for your attention. And we continue with the project. And next step, Vienna, I think. Well, no, I think no. Yes. We hope we will meet all of us in Vienna. Thank you very much, and we have a good day. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.
See you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Ya que acabo.